morning, this is Matthias Chang once again. And this will be my third address in a series of video seminars on propaganda and counter-propaganda. Before doing so, I would like to make some comments on the recent by-elections in Sungai Besar and Kuala Kangsar. Many people ask me, why am I so happy and so positive despite the fact that the opposition parties lost the by-election in Kuala Kangsar and Sungai Besar. And Najib, the Prime Minister, says God answered his prayers when he won on behalf of BN the two by-elections. Likewise, I will also say God has answered my prayers following the results of the two by-elections. And we ask why God answered to his prayers and my prayers. Well, very simple. My prayer was different from Najib's prayers, because my focus is not on short term but long term, the future of Malaysia and particularly the future of the Bumiputra community, as well as the welfare of the country as a whole. Just let me say this. In the past few weeks, when the by-election was announced, I stated categorically and emphatically that as far as I'm concerned, as far as my view is concerned, the two by-elections is irrelevant, because whoever so win or lose the election, the power equation will remain the same. BN will remain as government in power, as well as UMNO will be the leading factor in the coalition, which is nothing, whether they lose or win. But the propaganda post the election will be different. And therefore you see and hear Najib saying winning the two by-election is endorsement and the support of people for his leadership, and all the other scandals had no effect and were not relevant. Fine, that's what he says, doesn't matter. But let me say this to you, alright? So I won't take too much time on this issue. What he says is a full of crap. It's soundbites propaganda. Now, to me, the by-election illustrates once again the consequences of what I call earlier, much earlier in one of my addresses to you, the effect and consequence of the triangulation strategy. On one hand, as applied to BN, Barisan Nasional, and on the other, as applied to the opposition parties. From the results, we can see what happened to the opposition parties, and the main loser, for want of a better term, was PAS. On the part of the opposition parties, insofar as BN is concerned, the main loser in the future will be MCA, led by a spineless leader called Liao Tonglai, Minister of Transport. Having said that, why am I so happy with the results of the by-elections? Because Najib personally is a dilemma. He's not in a fix. Do he move forward with the general election, beef up by the so-called positive results of the two by-election, or will he stick on to the plan B, postpone the election and invoke emergency rule? Now he's a dilemma. How sure is he that if he call for a general election or even a snap election, as some of these pundits has advocated, he will win? Will he need to invoke plan B, emergency rule? This is the big question mark. And I think And I'm telling you, all the people in the country, don't be surprised, there'll be at least a few more by-elections as a result of death of a couple of more Aduns or MPs. It will be either from constituency now controlled by the opposition parties, and then one or two from the BN parties. But I believe there'll be one or two by-elections whereby the opposition constituencies will be vacant. So there'll be a by-election in those areas to enable the powers that be behind the curtain to evaluate where they are coming from, their strengths and weaknesses. So, having said that, let me say to you all, forget about the by-election. It's irrelevant, right? Focus on the long term, the trend. Now, what can we draw? What are the conclusions, immediate conclusions can we draw from the results? Firstly, it confirms the country is broken, it's in a mess, politically, spiritually, psychologically, and emotionally. Specifically, the Malay community, who forms the majority of the people in this country and the majority of members of party, the UMNO party in power, as well as PAS. Why? They are still confused and at a loss, and still are not aware of the dark consequences following the continuing premiership of Najib. Because it shows very clearly none of the key members of UMNO and the Barisan Nasional, as well as PAS and some of the leaders of the opposition parties, have put Malaysia first, as opposed to their self-interest, their struggle for power, and climbing up the hierarchy. So none of them, can I say, has put Malaysia first, and there will be consequences arising from that attitude and from that position. I'm now telling you, for the last time, our country is broken. And when the global financial crisis hit us in very soon, maybe in a period of weeks or months, our country will collapse because the Prime Minister and all the other leaders, as well as some of the leaders of the opposition, are totally clueless as to what will happen and what is needed to protect the livelihood, the interests of the people at large, and more importantly, the Malay community, and how their cherished crown jewels will be demolished. And let me say this, and you'll hear it from me for the first time today. The Malay community, following the devastation, the financial consequences of a global impact of the crisis that is sweeping down in Europe and America, they will rise up in vengeance against Najib and demand an accountability and demand answers why the country can collapse and be such a mess if he was in charge and knew what was going on. Our country is insolvent. Okay? If you don't understand the word insolvent, the common word is bankrupt. Literally, financially bankrupt. But technically, the word insolvent means that you are not able to pay your debts as and when it becomes due. If you're an individual, if you can't pay the debts as and when it becomes due, it can be made a bankrupt. If it's a company, and when a company cannot pay its debts as and when it becomes due, it can be wound up, kaput. This is what's going to happen. And more importantly, let me tell you, the people in Bank Negara Ministry of Finance are clueless because our reserves are all in US dollars, majority. And right now there's a crisis that's shaking the entire global leaders and financial elites. The petrodollar system has collapsed. Not collapsing, has collapsed. And now countries, oil exporting countries, exporting oil, are selling oil not in US dollars, but in yuan, Chinese yuan, or Russian rubles and gold. This signifies the end of the American financial hegemony and the petrodollar system. Now, ordinary people, the makcik-pakcik, will not understand what I'm saying. That doesn't matter. Because my address to you today is meant for the elites, the leaders in UMNO, and the leaders in the opposition parties. Are you prepared for this devastation? If you are not, the country is in trouble. I can assure you the country will be in trouble. Alright? So, the gloating by Najib, by some members of the UMNO, that Tun Mahathir must step down, forget about any more struggling against Najib, just retire, alright, into the sunset. They don't know what they are talking about. You see, was Mahathir the leader of the opposition parties? Was he the strategist devising all the strategy and tactics? No, wasn't it? Those strategy and tactics were developed by the parties themselves. All Tun did was to give the moral leadership, and yet, despite this effort alone, Najib and BN could not wipe out the opposition parties. Okay? And being a by-election, the government poured so much money and used so much dirty tricks to win the election. But this cannot be repeated in a general election. Alright? So, do not listen anymore to this propaganda. The by-election, the results of the by-election is a non-issue. Forget it and move on. And now, I will come to the main topic, alright, of what we have to discuss today. That is propaganda and counter-propaganda. Now, earlier, I said that Najib and UMNO has a plan B. In the event they take the view that they can't win the election, they may, most likely they will, impose emergency rule. Otherwise, why was there a rush to have the National Security Council Act passed by Parliament and refuse to acknowledge any proposal of amendment by the sultans? It went through because they had to get it done as soon as possible to lay the basis for emergency rule. And they had to do this to various means and method. Now, to some of you, when I say there's this dire danger, alright, not only in this address, but in my previous address, that there may not be even a 14th general election, because they may not want it, and that there will be a few more by-elections to determine more certainly which direction to take, then, having this factual background, you may now be in a better position to understand what I'm going to say to you. Now, all governments throughout the country, throughout the world, all governments, through their intelligence organization and agencies, always conduct false flag operations. Okay? The term is false flag operation. The term false flag derives from olden days, okay, when boats were sailing, okay, and there are pirates in ocean, right, hijacking ships. So to signal whether you're an enemy or a friend, you have to hoist the flag to show the country of origin, and or to signal whether you are distressed or you're a friend. But pirates, in order to take over a target ship, would mislead the target ship with a false flag that they are friendly. Alright? So that the target ship will welcome them. And then when they are very close to the target ship, they realize that that ship is a pirate ship. The flag they hoisted to show their friends, alright, was a false flag. Now that's the historical background of false flag. So false flag is an operation that camouflages who is responsible for the operation. Thus, for example, if government A wants to blame B for the attack, the terrorist attack, government A will launch a false flag operation and leave evidence that the perpetrator of that operation, the massacre, the bombing, the killing is by B. You understand? Alright? But actually, they are the one who organizes it. Okay? Now you may say, how could a government be so mad, so insane, to organize an operation resulting in the death, murder, and killing of its own citizens? Not possible. It's a crime. How can government condone crimes and blame on other people? Well, let me tell you, it happens every day. Alright? But today, I'm going to highlight to you a few examples that will shock you. But to those of us who are experienced and have the expertise to investigate, we know this for a long time. I've known about false flag operations for the last 40 years of my career. Alright? The first one is, the most famous, the most gruesome, is Operation Northwoods. Okay? This is the unclassified letter from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the chairman, to the Defense Secretary, authorizing a false flag operation to provoke the US military and the President of the United States at that particular time, President Kennedy, to launch an attack on Cuba. Okay? Now, at the bottom of this letter, you see the signature? Can you see it? It's signed by Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. You got it? Now, very clearly, this is not a forged document. It's the actual document of the letter by the Chairman of Joint Chiefs. Okay? Now, what does this operation means? Now, I will now put before you what Pentagon proposed to justify the Cuban invasion in 1962. This expose was written by a famous author, James Benford, entitled The Body of Secrets. Okay? And it says, justification for US military intervention in Cuba, and was provided by the Joint Chiefs to the Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, on March 13, 1962. It's called Operation Northwoods. Alright? And was written in response to the head of the project, Colonel Edward Lansdale. This was a top secret memorandum. How to create a pretext to attack Cuba. Now, this proposal, in summary, alright, the anti-Castro program comprised of few other sub-operations, one of which was called Operation Mongoose, and involved the assassination of Cubans living in the United States. forming and fomenting fake communist Cuban terror campaign in the Miami area in Florida. Okay? Faking Cuban Air Force attack on civilian jetliner, blowing up US ship in the Cuban waters, and blaming it on Cuba as a Cuban sabotage. So, here is a clear example of a government, the US government, behind the back of the US president, involving the army, intelligence agencies, to have fake assassination, murder of Cubans in Miami, in America, in Florida. And have fake planes, Cuban planes, attacking civilian jetliners in America, attacking US ships, and blame everyone and everything on Cuba to justify an invasion of Cuba. This is a classic false flag operation to justify a certain policy options available. Alright? Now, why they do that? Why do they want to create an environment of terror, an environment of hate and anger? Let me quote you two famous propaganda strategies. First is Stalin. And he says this, and I quote, "The easiest way to gain control of a population is to carry out acts of terror. The public will clamor for such laws if their personal security is threatened." Meaning, a peaceful country will turn topsy-turvy and chaos because of a false flag operation, thereby enabling the government in control, in power, to seize absolute power, delay elections, and clamp down on freedom. In the case of Germany, Hermann Göring, one of the top ministers of Hitler, said this: "People don't want war. Of course they don't want war. But it's always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it's a democracy, a dictatorship, a parliament, or a communist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is to tell them they have been attacked and denounce the pacifists for the lack of patriotism, exposing the country to danger. It was the same in any country. And then, in modern situation, okay, false flag operations is also launched by tyrannical governments, all right, to create confusion and to give a bad name to progressive elements and opposition parties. All right, if they feel any group, any NGO is a threat to their power, they will create operations to blame it on those organizations for being responsible for the chaos. All right, because those organizations, those NGO is a threat. And coupled with propaganda and control by the mass media, it will be very difficult for the people to know what is false and what is truth. Why? Because all the mass media, which are controlled by the government, will just repeat the press statement issued by the government. They will not do independent research or investigation. The government says, print this, and they will print. And everyone reading newspaper will say, oh my God, how could this organization be so treacherous and betray the country and create this havoc and kill people or create chaos? But actually, they are not the one. The people behind the chaos, the terrorism, is the corrupt dictatorial regime. Okay? And this is very important point to take. Okay? So the first example is the Joint Chiefs of America with CIA doing a false flag operation. If you want a closer example to our country, was way back in Iran, what we call Operation Ajax. That time, Iran was a democracy. And a very popular leader, right, Mossadegh, was elected as a prime minister. And he decided to nationalize the oil industry from the British and US interests. But the powers that be, the US and Britain, could not allow such a move by a democratic Iran. So they launched a coup called Operation Ajax. It was engineered by a CIA agent named Kermit Roosevelt, the grandson of President Roosevelt. Okay? And when the coup was launched and effected, the Shah of Iran was put into place. Okay? As a result of which, the Shah was able to create the most horrific secret service that tortured, murdered all opposition to his rule until the Islamic Revolution led by Ayatollah Khomeini. So this is a second example of force-led operation to topple a country and a country, duly elected by democratic means. Okay? Right now, currently, today, you are seeing the same thing happen in Syria. An attack by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, US and Britain to topple the Assad regime, government, so that they can have more control and better control of the oil resources of Syria, and to build a pipeline from Qatar to Europe. So they created ISIS and with other terrorist organizations, all financed by Saudi Arabia. Alright? This is an established fact, even admitted by Hillary Clinton. Then, in my past address, I also mentioned to you that propaganda is also a form of brainwashing. It violates your mind. It rapes your mind so that you become a zombie, right? You act, you behave, and you speak like a collective, like a herd. Now, many people told me, Faiz, are you sure that there are such programs or such technology to brainwash people's mind? Surely they must be captured, put in prison, and to be brainwashed. Yes, in some cases they have to be captured, isolated, in prison to be brainwashed. But for the general public, brainwashing can be effected through the mass media, through television, radio, newspapers, and even social media. The most famous brainwashing program ever devised, alright, is a project called MK Ultra by the CIA. It refers to the mind control program, and MK Ultra is the code name, okay, to brainwash people's mind. Okay, the pet project of the CIA. And it was organized through the Scientific Intelligence Division of the CIA and coordinated by the Special Operations Division of the US Army Chemical Corps. Okay? This program, this operation MK Ultra, used numerous methodologies to manipulate people's mental states and alter their brain functions. Even using drugs such as LSD. Alright? You're familiar with LSD, right? The drug that make people, the hippies, and other chemicals, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, sexual abuse, and torture. And guess what? This operation and research was undertaken at 80 institutions, including 44 colleges and universities, as well as hospitals and pharmaceutical companies. So, you will now get an idea of the scope of brainwashing technologies and methodologies. Incredible, isn't it? It will involve universities, as disclosed in America. So, when I say brainwashing is real, it violates and rapes your mind, please take it seriously. And recently, just last week, we heard about the Orlando in America, Florida, of the killing by a so-called Batman, all right? Well, see this fellow? He has been brainwashed, a patsy, to kill 50 Americans. And guess what? He was employed by a company called G4S, the largest private mercenary company in the world that provides security forces to most governments and spread over 120 countries. Now, why would a top security company of the world, employed by US, Britain and other countries, be involved in this terrorist attack? He was in fact interviewed by the FBI and no action taken. Why? So please take my word seriously. The false flag operations are very serious. Its target is you, and the purpose is to blame it on someone else. But the perpetrators are the very government itself that's responsible for the false flag operation. So given this very general broad outline, may I in this address appeal to all of you Malaysians. Please be on your guard. Do not be provoked in any way by the government or by any organization or political party using issues to create tension, disunity, and fear. And this is what's happening now. Okay? And the hudud issue must be viewed in that context. Because UMNO won in the two by-elections because there were a lot of Malays who were frightened by the hudud proposal of Hadi. Alright? Not just Chinese or non-Muslims, but there were many Malays who were afraid. Because they know that that hudud, as propounded by Hadi, is not a reflection of genuine Islam. It's not the essence of Islam, but it's distortion of Islam. That's why there is a swing from PAS to UMNO. There'll be other issues that will be thrown out in the future. Some may be by the Chinese chauvinists, organized and brainwashed to do at the bidding of some of these leaders in MCA. That's why I have no qualms in saying to my Chinese brothers and sisters, so long as MCA is a party and condone the crime of Najib, go all out to oppose MCA, isolate its leader, Liao Tonglai, who has no backbone. He may be a nice guy, but no backbone. His threat of resigning from the cabinet is a bluff. Oppose him so that he cannot use the party apparatus to put fear among the non-Muslims, alright, to go against Islam, as opposed to Hadi, alright. And by voicing their fear and through ignorance condemn Islam, it creates a backlash on the Malay community, the good people, who thinks that the Chinese are insensitive to Islam. That's why I respect their feelings, how they worship Allah. Alright? And therefore, they will have a backlash and say, Chinese are unreasonable, they have no right to interfere, creating a disunity and clash. So because it takes two hands to clap, it takes two hands to clap. If the Chinese are not being provoked and instigated by the leaders of the Chinese political party, then there will not be a clash, because it takes two hands to clap. Alright? Now, as I said, in conclusion, the two by-election is irrelevant. Alright? But it has brought certain intelligence to me, which I will not disclose to you, because these are very important information which I will hold to myself to plan the next strategy. But it shows, I'll give a hint, the mental instability, the pressure in which Najib is suffering prior to the by-elections. And now, even though he has achieved victory, he's still in a dilemma. And do not discount any kind of force-like operation that may be launched in the future. Alright? Like I said before, don't be surprised, there'll be a couple more deaths and other by-elections in the pipeline to determine whether Plan B will be invoked. Be that as it may, the first thing we must do is put Malaysia first, not Najib. Throw out the scumbags, right, and save Malaysia. Because this is the last chance. I know there are UMNO leaders who cannot accept my criticisms, but understand where I'm coming from. These are not personal attacks. But I know some of them realize the truth, but you're not going to do anything. Let me say this to them. Time is running short. Do what is right according to your conscience. Put Malaysia first and save your community and save your country. And finally, once again, I appeal all of you to have absolute faith in God Almighty. Surrender to His will completely. Have faith that He will defend you, protect you, and guide you under all circumstances in the face of all enemies and adversities. And we will prevail and build a new Malaysia. Believe you me. With that, I say thank you, and I hope you will spread this video as far and wide as possible. It's a very important address to you. Thank you.